Now you all have to accept that. You recorded yours, right, Eric?
I did.
Oh, good,
I did.
good,
This one, this one.
good. This one, this time. Yes. And boy, I see Randall's face so big. Not Eric's finger. Can't we have Eric's finger instead?
Oh, he's got one.
Iggy does? Where's Iggy's got the finger? Yes.
We're all represented. She gets like Sarah's.
I'm here. I'm here. We can have my coffee or something. Anyway, okay, we'll get started here. And is everybody who's in the room logged in? It looks like. Alex, are you logged in? Not yet. Or are you doing something else? Oh, thank you. I just saw you. Good. Oh, mute. Thank you. We're getting the hang of this. We're trying to get the hang of this. So our topic for this session is accompaniment and texture, timbre, range, register, all of those things. Because at this point on Wednesday, we hope that you have gotten some themes together. But now you have to think about, well, what are you going to have? There we go, Azani. You guys are joining. Have to think about how do you accompany that in a way that makes sense and makes your music into something. Oh, thank you, Tim. Now I feel like I'm one of the people. Thank you. There we go. At least it's not a stupid looking face that we've got behind. The finger, the finger. This is what you want, isn't it? Have you got it? Good. Okay, we're done. And I'm going to share screen. And I have done a lecture similar to this in years gone by, just so you know. I'm going to shrink that baby. Yeah, that's a better one, don't you think, Tim?
Yeah.
Although I liked the smile. This is good. This is good. So my thoughts about accompaniment, the main thing is that the accompaniment is like if you have a pas de deux, those of you who know ballet, you got the ballerina, the prima ballerina who's doing all the fancy stuff. And then you got the guy there who is lifting her up or holding her hand while she twirls around, or you know, all these stuff, all these things that he's the dancing partner to her beautiful movement. And he does not try to upstage her. He doesn't walk in front of her. He doesn't block our view of the ballerina, right? At any time, because that would be a big no-no. Now, the most important thing that you have to remember about the accompaniment is that the melody has its own strata, right, of range. So and it may go up and it may go down, you know, it moves around a bit. You can't have your accompaniment on top of that range. That is rule number one. If you do that, you will be masking the melody. It would be, well, you confuse it because you frustrate it. There's a good word, because sound is waves. And if you put waves in the same frequency on top of each other, you get something interesting. They start interfering with each other. But if you keep a little bit of space above and below the melody, or even you can share a note sometimes, we can hear the melody easily. But if your melody is here and your accompaniment goes like this across it, it will sound perhaps interesting. Looking at Tim's face, perhaps interesting. It might be something to do an experiment around. try writing something where the accompaniment keeps crossing the melody, and give it to the musicians tonight, and then make another version where the accompaniment doesn't cross, just so you get this sound concept in your ear. When I was in music school, there was talk all the time about Bruckner, that Bruckner had a brown sound. And that term did not make sense to me until I went and heard a symphony, and I was like, you don't hear anything with clarity, because he's covering up things that you're supposed to hear with other things. So it's the concept of brown, like when you're painting, if you mix all the colors together, what do you get? Brown, right? So that's what they meant. And a really good experiment to do then for yourself is to go to YouTube, listen to Bruckner, and then listen to Mahler. And Mahler knew this principle backwards and forwards. If you have something interesting, if you are in the orchestra and you are playing something interesting, the audience will hear you. And I have heard from orchestra musicians over and over again, they say, if you give us something hard to play and you mask it, we are frustrated because we have to work so hard. We have to learn those notes because we're getting paid to play them, but you can't hear them. They are so unhappy. So if you give players something hard, make sure that we can hear them play it. Okay? It's a common theme. Now, any questions so far? I want to see if it'll let me see more people today. Maybe if I go, I'd like to expand this. Oh, here we go. And then can I make it? I just have to go back and forth between windows. And William is here. Yeah, you aren't here in person, are you? See, I want to know who's here so I can pay attention. It's a good thing. Okay, now if you're writing an accompaniment for a section, now look at one of the walls in this room or one of the walls where you're at, and imagine that behind your screen, you had polka dots and stripes and paisley and plaid and all these things, even behind this screen, right? Would you be able to perceive the screen as easily if the background was really busy? And imagine that you have that. Can you imagine wild and crazy designs on your wall and then you put a painting on there? Are you going to see the painting easily? Or is it going to be so distracting you can't tell what's going on? That's what I think is distracting. So you don't want a distracting background. Now you're allowed, which didn't happen in this room. Oh, it sort of did. You can have a different color. If I turn it this way, you can see it's blue behind those cupboards, right? You can have different colors on each wall. And that's what in time, space with sound will tell us we're in a different room or on a different wall, is that you use a different background. But when you're in a section, you want your background to be kind of static. It's supporting the melody, and it can be interesting. If you want to go and look at interesting accompaniments that are static, go study the Chopin nocturnes and notice the cool thing about Chopin and almost any great composer is he wrote his first nocturne, has a beautiful background for each of the melodies, and the B section has a different background than the A section. You turn to the second nocturne and he doesn't go, oh, you know that thing, it works so well in my first piece, I think I'll do it again. It's entirely different. And I found only a couple of patterns that repeat from one nocturne to another, looking through the entire set. And never does he have the same one for the A section. There might be an A section one that becomes the accompaniment for a B or a C section in another nocturne, but never the A section. So one of the ways you can tell the nocturnes apart is that each one, the background wall is painted a different color. I like to use visual imagery. Make sense to you? So yeah, don't make it interesting, but don't change it. So don't use block chords in one measure and arpeggios in the next measure and scales in the next measure. That's what I'm talking about. That would be changing your dancing partner every move, right? And it could be very chaotic. Now, see, I imagine that and then I think, oh, I want to write that piece. Do you do that too? You imagine really outlandish things, go, oh, I want to do that. But we don't want to do that. Probably for these pieces. We want to know we're in the A section, we're in the B section. Now, if you're transitioning from the A section to the B section, you can do something different. And it could be a combo of the two so that you kind of morph from one into the other. Like you're moving from one room into another while keeping your eyes on both colors, right? You can do that. It's okay. So that's the important thing first. Okay, now choosing a texture to go with your melody. Let's say you were writing a piece that was very anxious, anxiety. Would you use long notes in your accompaniment? Probably not, right? You'd have possibly short notes that are quite chromatic. That's what occurs to me when I think of anxiety. My melody could jump around like crazy, but underneath it is this sense of, oh, my stomach juices are going mad. This is awful feeling, right? Where if instead I wanted my melody to sound even more peaceful than it does all by itself, then I would use those long, long, long notes, interrupted by Daisy's sneezes. It's good you're here because your sneezes are going to be in the canon. Someone requested that. I think it might have been Eric. It was kind of fun. Anyway, so think about making the accompaniment complementary to the theme. Now, does the accompaniment have to be below the theme? No. Is it most commonly below the theme? Yeah. But if you wanted a state of suspension, then you could have the accompaniment be like clouds almost above a melody. Can the melody happen in the middle? Think about it. Of course. But then you have to really be watching that range where the melody is and don't let the upper part cover it over or the lower part cover it over. Keep them separate. Very important. So another thing that occurs to me, if you want to make your accompaniment a little more interesting, when do you do the interesting stuff? When the melody is interesting or when the melody is holding a long note? When the melody holds a long note. This is all about being complementary. These are the lessons from 16th century counterpoint, right? That you balance everything. So when the melody is the primary thing that's going on, you balance it with something that supports the idea in the melody, unless you're working for irony, right? Then you have to do that. Well, that's your impulse, so it has to be ironic, right? But it won't be exactly what you have. If you wrote, for example, a very calm, beautiful melody, and then underneath it put that anxious, fast-moving chromatic stuff, that would be like you're trying to project calm, but inside you're going, right? Would that be cool? Maybe. Yeah. So these things don't have to happen on just one level. We don't have to write music that's flat, that has only one dimension. You can you can do things, and sometimes it can just be little things that poke out during long notes or rests. Sometimes it can just be this underlying thing that might be very soft that you only hear when everyone else cuts out. Like if you're writing for an orchestra, you might write a big, I don't even know, maybe a roll, a suspended cymbal roll, and everybody's being really loud, and then you cut them out one by one by one by one, and then you hear only the suspended cymbal roll, and you hear backwards that I heard that roll. It was there the whole time. And now it's the prominent thing. Okay, you can do these kind of things. It's really fun. So we've talked about all that. Can the accompaniment come to the foreground sometimes? Could the dancer who's showing off the prima ballerina every now and again do a little jump? Right? Of course. Not when she's doing something really important, unless you want to say, she's too egotistical, look at me, right? That's setting up a different kind of dance. So it's always asking yourself, what do I want? What do I want here? This very moment. It's kind of fun. Yeah, and I've done a lot of looking at Chopin nocturnes. So he's great at obscuring the beat. You may decide it would be best for my melody if you can't tell where the downbeat is. And Chopin's Nocturne in C sharp minor does that. He starts on the C sharp, but then he does a pattern so that the C sharp is always just before the beat. And then he starts on, you don't know it with the pattern on that particular nocturne. He's got C sharp and G sharp. You don't know where the beat is. You don't know if it's C sharp major or C sharp minor. And then when the melody comes in, first it's minor and then it's major. And I always feel like what he's trying to depict there is you are in a dense fog or a dense forest and you don't know the way. And he does it extremely well. Then you get to the B section and you go bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum, ba-dum. You know where you are now. It's a huge contrast. So it's a piece to listen to. Alberti bass, do you know what that is? That's the bottom top, middle top. This is 18th century European music. It intensifies the sense of the beat because you've got that strong beat with the low note always. Ba da dee da dee da dee da dee da. And you're in duple meter and we know right where we are. This is the opposite of being lost in the obscuring fog. And the waltz bass with a bum chum chum intensifies the beat and helps make triple meter happen. Triple meter, we're also familiar with it because we are all musicians, but is it very natural feeling? When I'm teaching kids, especially the young ones, I have to teach them how triple meter feels because we don't have precisely 3 of anything. In fact, quintuple meter is more natural. It's not only the number of fingers we have on each hand and toes we have, it's the way that we swing our arms. So if you swing your arms, it takes you longer to get it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try it sometime. It is quintuple meter, the way we swing our arms. So it's a thing. But 3, we don't have exactly 3. Most of us have at least 3 hairs on our head, but how would we just discern just 3? Not so much, because we have pairs of things. We have single things with single nose with 2 nostrils, right? 2 ears, 2 eyes, but no 3s. 3 is mysterious in a way. So, and I know I've mentioned in other sessions that I think that the asymmetrical meter and the constantly changing meter that I very often write in more imitates the sound of speech, which is natural. When we're thinking of 18th century European music, we want that regular inch of music that a measure defines. But if we're trying to go for something else, you may want to do something more natural in terms of speech, right? The measured music, when it's not triple, the duple and quadruple meters are very natural to us because that's what we walk in, right? And the 6/8 is natural for horses galloping, right? That's the sound of them is that. Here's something, see, I wrote this quite a long time ago. I'm reminding myself, don't assume the meter magically happened, but don't stress it to the point of hammering. Meaning if you have every strong beat intensified, beat 1 and beat 3 in 4/4 time, it gets agonizing almost. It's almost like Chinese water torture with the, I've heard of this. I don't know if people still think of this. If you drop drops of water on people's forehead continuously at the same pace, that's considered a torture. So don't torture your audience. So what are ways that you can get away from hammering the meter? Syncopation, tying across the bar line, things like that can be very beautiful. So you have to think in terms of what you're writing. When do I need to set up the meter? When do I need to obscure it? If you have dancers, you better set it up at the beginning. And I've heard stories, one of the first multimeter pieces, do you know what it was? Early 20th century? Rite of Spring, yes. And the choreographer was Nijinsky, famous ballet dancer. And apparently he was backstage counting madly, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, go! And the premiere of the dance with the piece was a disaster. So it was rather hilarious. But the music, when they performed it just as music, was instantly successful. But dancers, when they're rehearsing, how many of you have been in dance class? Yeah, several. And what do they say? 5, 6, 7, 8, we're going. So that's how it works. Then also think about how your accompaniment interacts harmonically with the melody. So you need a balance of chord tones and non-chord tones. And sometimes the melody will have expressive notes that are not in the chord. But if you have like a 3-voice texture going on accompanying a melody, you want to make sure you're not doubling tendency tones, which are the leading tone, the 7th of a chord, things like that. And for here, getting back to Chopin, because I know his music so well, if he's got a dominant 7th chord and he wants only 3 tones, he'll look at what the melody has and leave that one out of the accompaniment. So when you're playing those chords, sometimes he's leaving out the 3rd, sometimes he's leaving out the 5th. He's being very careful. You can always leave out the 5th if you want to, but he'll notice. So what's in that melody? And he doesn't just say, my left hand is doing this. Okay. So it's a thing to notice. And then I know Randall was going to talk about harmonic rhythm. How many of you went to Randall's harmonic rhythm class? A few people. Yeah, you want to think about how often you change the chord. Because if you change that always at the same pace, that is a monotonous thing. Now, and I even wrote it here, I should not let you see that. Often you have fewer chord changes at the beginning of a phrase and more at the end of the phrase. There's there's a sense of building towards the end of the phrase. That's part of what lets us know we're getting to the end of a phrase, and particularly if you have a phrase length that isn't ordinary. What's the ordinary phrase length? How many measures? Hold up fingers on your Zoom. Yes, William got it 4, or 8, right? That doesn't mean always do 4-measure and 8-measure phrases unless you're writing for dance class where they need it to all be 8-measure phrases. It's just what they need. But otherwise, you can look at all sorts of music and listen to music and listen for where are the irregular phrase lengths? And they make us feel a little uneasy, but it's very cool. It makes us go, oh, I have to keep listening. I don't know what's coming next, which is an important thing to have in your listener. If they listen to 2 or 3 measures of your piece, or even 8, and they're like, I know where this piece is going, they are not going to be listening anymore. They're going to be thinking about, oh, I wonder if I can sneak out and go to Subway, or something like that. I always say they're thinking about their grocery list or the paper that's due tomorrow, and they're not listening anymore. Make sense? So one last thing is your palette, your colors. If you're not thinking of writing your chords, if you're thinking of using chords as colors, come up with your palette. So it should be consistent in your piece. You can, if you want to startle people, use a chord that they don't expect, right? But if you're writing a piece that's using 18th century European harmonies, and then suddenly you throw in several major 7th chords, it's going to sound very odd. But if you've been using jazz kind of harmonies and lots of 7ths and 9ths and 11ths and 13ths, and suddenly you use simple triads, that will also sound really odd. So a painter will set out their colors before they start painting, and they'll know what their palette is. My palette is oranges and yellows and browns, and I'm going to paint sunflowers, right? Or my palette is like my shirt, it's going to be blues and turquoises, right? Then I'm going to be painting water. Now, is it time to do the canon? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and share the canon. Okie doke. Let's see. For those of you who weren't here the last time we worked on this, that's several. Can you all hear that on your headphones or on your computer? Yes? Okay. Here's where we're at. Today we added, I can't do my taxes, but I know the circle of fifths. And here's the new part. Okay, pretty cool. So at the end of our last canon writing, someone said, well, there are 2 things we still need in the canon. One is walking back, running back, sloshing back from Culver's last night in the rain. And the other one is the draft being punctuated by Daisy sneezes. Well, maybe, but we got to do these 2 things. And don't you think? So which one do you want to do here? The walking back or the sneezing, since we have Daisy here. How many want the sneezing? And I gotta look at everybody. I don't see any hands. Okay, sneezing or walking? How many vote for sneezing? Hold your hands up. I'm gonna count them on the Zoom. 1, 2. I've got Iggy and Daisy. And 3, Zani. Okay, how many vote for walking, sloshing, slogging, running back from? That's gonna win it. Okay, I believe. Yep. Am I wrong? Was it equal? Alex, did you vote? Yes? What did you vote for? The sneezing one? Mary Kate, did you vote? You are the tiebreaker. Our adventure walking back from Culver's or the draft punctuated by sneezes? The sneezes. Okay, that's what we're gonna do. So now we need our sentence, right? That has something about the draft, something about Daisy and the sneezes. And what would be, okay. Is anyone getting, well, maybe what we're gonna do is whichever one of those someone gets a good rhythm for first. And if you have a rhythm for it, somebody who's online who wants to tell us what it is, let us know. Caleb, you're online. And William's online. Are you getting a sense of rhythm? Usually Stephen has this right away. Well, we don't know our wording. That's what we have to have. Whichever one you get words for first. A really easy one.
Yeah, but I mean, you did guys go about,
Achoo, achoo, achoo.
yeah.
Daisy sneezing in the draft. Achoo, achoo, achoo. Oh yeah, but first I put in the rhythm. So we're gonna, yeah, we'll have it there. Daisy sneezing in the draft. No, Daisy sneezing in the draft. Achoo. Are they all even? Daisy sneezing, Daisy sneezing. So this one is, yes. Daisy sneezing. Got to see where we're getting to. Oh, up here. In the draft. And then this is here, right? Achoo, achoo, achoo. Do this. Okay, so here's the rhythm. I'm going to put the words in so we don't forget it. Oh, sorry, I have to do Control L. Daisy's sneezing. Now we got to move you guys. In the draft. Two. Whoop, went too far. Go back here. Sorry. Two. Two. Oh, we needed a doohickey here, right? Now we have to figure out pitches. Okay, we have, so we're coming from a B, we have E and A, and the A goes to G. A to E is a what interval? Oh, it's a fourth, isn't it? But if we invert it, it's a fifth. So when we have a fifth, we usually put the third in between them, which would be this note, right? And that will also work with the E and the G because that's a C chord, right? Then we have C and E.
Could you try?
Say,
Oh, sorry. Could you try CBA? So
oh, here, make this one a B. Woo! And then up to the C. Daisy sneezing. Da, 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 right? That was kind of cool. And let's try singing. No, the circle of fifths. Daisy sneezing. Daisy sneezing. Maybe we just want Daisy sneezing, not, and Daisy is sneezing, but just Daisy sneezing. Because it's too hard to do two S's, isn't it? I'd say. Daisy sneezing. We're okay, right? We don't want to get any higher than that because we want to stay within an octave. This is a lesson from 16th century counterpoint. Now we have D and F. We have a couple choices. We could keep the C and have, anybody know what chord that is instantaneously? D minor seventh. We could go to A, then it would be D minor. We could go to B and it would be B diminished in first inversion as it's supposed to happen. We could go to G and it becomes a G7 chord. Okay. How many of you were as fast as I was doing that? That's what you want to get fast at, is knowing what your possibilities are if you're writing something in the style of 18th century European music. And which one of those sounds intriguing to you? The minor seventh? Yeah, so I think we stay on this note. And then here we have B and D, and we probably want with B and D what note? G, because that'll give us our major chord. So then we could fill this in with 2/16 notes and do in the draft. We could do in the draft. In the draft. We could do all of those, right? You like the 16 notes? Okay. And then we put a slur on those to say that those notes are both going with the. That's how you indicate notes that go with the same word. The draft. And it's kind of nice to have little scales. We did that earlier today. Now we're going to listen from here. Ooh.
it's nice and like florid with the both of them having like the scales.
Yes, florid counterpoint, which means elaborate, ornamented. Now, what note do we need for achoo? Should it be achoo, achoo, achoo? All on G. Achoo, achoo, achoo. Except what do we have to end on when we get to D and B? We got to have G, don't we? Now we could do most of them on G. Achoo, 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 achoo. We could have one of them be up a note. Achoo, achoo, achoo. They could all be AG. What do you think? Achoo, 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 achoo.
I think the G clashes with the second voice because they're both singing G.
So you think maybe the A here? Achoo, achoo. And maybe this one back to the A. Achoo, achoo, achoo. Okay, but that's okay. And we'll hear it more when people are actually saying the words. Yeah. Are we pretty good with this? Achoo, achoo, achoo. And if people don't sing it precisely, I'll guarantee you it's not going to happen that people will sing it precisely. Oh, let's see. Yes. No. Shift. Control C. Control V. And then we'll hear what it sounds like when it's with the other part. So, recapping. Oh, we were going to keep going. It's fine, isn't it? Okay, so you all have to come up with something that will work with Walking Back from Culver's. And as an homage to Stephen Sondheim, who died this year, sadly, in the last couple months, it would be great if we use lots and lots of words for what we did coming back. Running, slogging, sloshing, walking, trudging, come up with as many words as you can. And then tomorrow, yeah, that's what we'll do tomorrow morning. And whatever we write, see, it's going to go here. But then when we get to here, and I want to see if this works, I'm going to copy all of what we did. Because we have one more day of new material. One more session of new material, right? So here, this has to go here. And then 4 measures later, this has to go here. 4 measures later. Do you know what canon means? 1, 2, 3, 4. Anyone know what the word means? It's not the one that goes boom. That one only has 2 N's, C-A-N-O-N. No, this one only has 2. That one has 3, C-A-N-N-O-N. It means rule or law. Okay, so we realize this piece of counterpoint by reading a single line, and what we do is put right here an asterisk, and that's where the next voice enters. And then we can just put this, it'll be 1 line with repeats, okay? And you will all record it, and Eric will mix it, and we may sing along with what Eric has mixed live. It'll be really fun. But so what we've done has to be able to go together. So the tricky spot is going to be, could you hear it? Did I put everything at the right time, Randall? This. So we may have to write 2 phrases, which we could do if we use enough different words for what we did. Okay, So what I'm gonna do now is Control Z and get rid of all of those extras. And I think I do it one more time. Hello, David Milne. So we're done.